You are sure.
Naomi, is this working? Can you hear?
Very good, thank you.
Oh, okay.
I've seen so far.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Verizon. You're right, with Verizon.
No, right?
But I don't.
Yeah.
I just, yeah.
The thickest.
As long as you can hear you.
Yeah, I bet that it's.
That's cool.
I used to on the stuff I find.
See, that's cool.
That's cool.
That was easy.
That was easy.
What do we know? I didn't buy 8 months. I think that was a chart.
Yeah. That's what, hey, Sean? Yes. Are you calling me or saying hello? Oh, hello.
Michael, the clock has struck 6 o'clock. Are you ready?
Yes, we are, Mayor.
I will call the September 14th, 2021 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. Pledge of Allegiance, Councilman.
Yes.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Naomi, roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Bond, Councilmember Cavallari,
Here.
Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Briles,
Here.
Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
Councilmember Bond notified us that he'd be unable to attend tonight, so can we have a motion to excuse, please?
Motion to excuse.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. On to audience communication. I'm going to begin with those in the room, and then I'll move to those on the line, just if anyone wants to speak to the council tonight. So starting here, anyone members like to speak to the council? Not seeing any hands. Is there anyone online that would like to speak to the council? So I can only have one page up on the screen. So there will be another opportunity at the end of the meeting. So President, City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we're going to present the calendar that shows what we propose to be in the budget calendar for the budget season. It is intended as an opportunity for discussion, any questions that you might have. We are working, our finance department and communications and marketing department is pulling together a couple of slides that we will hope will serve as an introduction at the next council meeting to talk about some underlying themes that we're tracking in the budget as we prepare for this year's mid-biennium and the data that we've tracked from last year. So that's by way of foreshadowing. I'll turn the floor over to our finance director.
All right, so here we just have, go ahead and get that out of the way. So the clerk's going to have everyone's final numbers that we have requested from department heads as of the 1st of October, so that we can then work with the city manager, and then he will be passing out the estimated revenue sources and where we think our expenses are going to be falling roughly around October 5th. And then from there, we'll do a more broad overview at a meeting. And from there, then we'll have a preliminary budget that we've put together, and we will file that with the clerk, and she'll start doing the different publications that are needed. And we'll have our first hearing after the thoughts council has given and recommendations we've received. So then we'll go over the different revenue sources. We'll discuss the regular levy and the EMS levy, where we think we need our numbers to fall. And then we will need to go ahead at the November 9th meeting. We'll need to set those levies if possible. They do need to be filed with the county by November 30th. So worst case scenario, we could push that to November 23rd, but we would be pushing up against that deadline. And then I do know with Thanksgiving, that might get a little tight. I did throw the public hearing and the final amended budget on the final amended budget on the 23rd. And I did put the adoption to follow right after that. But if needed, we can push that adoption up through December 31st if we have to. Does anyone have any questions or recommendations on dates?
I'll recap that on October 5th is when we will provide council with our estimate of revenue. And then the following meeting on October 12th is when we'll have the preliminary budget prepared. And then between October 12th and November 9th is where the work and subsequent meetings and hearings and discussions in whatever direction we receive from council, that work can take place. Then I go on the public hearings on November 9th. And then public hearing on the final amended budget, whatever we're directed by council on the 23rd. Moving on then between the 23rd of November to December 31st, the range within which to adopt that 2021, 2022 final budget amendment for the mid-biennium.
Are there any questions from council? Not seeing any. We can move right along.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, with your permission, Mayor,
Yes, please.
let's move along. We were sensitive last council meeting, question and some commentary relating to our work thus far on the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act. We have the slideshow that we presented available for discussion and review, but what I wanted to highlight is that we do have a lengthy council meeting this evening, but there are some core dates that Laurel is going to provide for us relating to the time frames within which we have an opportunity to achieve certain milestones and are required to under the ARPA. Again, with our new communications and marketing team, we're working on some slideshows that can help clarify, comparing and contrasting the things that we as a municipality were able to do under the CARES Act that are available to us under ARPA. And we in listening to the questions or the comments from last week, try and give some ideas of what those restrictions look like in terms of do's and don'ts, examples of what is or isn't possible or available to us. We are going to try and explain a little more in a broken down fashion, the notion of counterfactual revenue and how measured against the 2019 baselines, we're able to measure a loss from COVID related about roughly 5.2 million. We have a total of 5.8 million to spend. We've got a time frame within which to do that. And I just wanted us to be able to slow down and learn a little bit more about what the opportunities are here for us to think strategically and long-term. We'll certainly make recommendations, and ultimately it's council's decision on how we'll move forward. But there are opportunities for us to seed certain projects, certain things that would be of a tremendous benefit to our community that could potentially pay us dividends longer term. We have outlined this borrowing from what Director Todd first framed out for us in capital spending, capital planning, the concept phase that moves to once we know there's more energy for particular expenditures, that we would develop more work to develop those ideas before we would ultimately make a decision on it. And I respect that the request of council is for us at every meeting to bring up this topic. I would like us to consider whether we might establish some milestones so that it isn't something necessarily that we would bring up if there is nothing new. But I also want to be respectful to the suggestion that some are experiencing that there isn't progress or that we're not being specific. But I wanted to envision the city council as the ultimate committee here that can direct us on our pacing and with regard to how we want to be deliberate in this work. Laurel, what are the timeframes within which we need to make certain key decisions? We're going to be building a slideshow on this for the next presentation. But if you could tell us, Laurel, now that'd be
So
appreciated.
at this point in time, we do have to have the expenses incurred by December 31st of 2024. But if it is some kind of a capital project, we do have up through December 31st of 2026 to actually expend those funds. So they basically just have to be earmarked. They have to be reserved. We have to say, yes, we are planning on spending this money.
Okay, with that intro on the time frame, Laura, I'd like to quickly, with the council's permission, go through the slideshow, just highlighting the salient points of what we've already covered.
So there are 4 different categories we can spend this funding on. I would say category A and C are going to be the most benefit for us. So any kind of capital investment, so investments in critical infrastructure are particularly well suited for ARPA funding because there isn't any kind of long-term not necessarily ongoing operating costs. That's what I'm looking for. So under premium pay for eligible workers, there is stipulations and guidelines on what an eligible worker is. And I will say that most of our funds will likely be expended under category C, just because this is a more broad category that will allow us to use this funding more easily, as long as it has some kind of a benefit to the public. Most expenses will fit under this category. And then they did add some things to category D, but I don't know that we don't have water and sewer. We could possibly do something with stormwater, but we are working through the technicalities of those potential projects at this time. So under the revenue loss, again, it's just less restrictive. As long as there's some kind of service or aid to citizens, this category can be used. We cannot use it on principal or interest of debt service, and we cannot put it strictly just into reserves for a rainy day. Okay, so I did want to go over how this is calculated again, because we do have quite a bit of revenue loss. Nearly all of our funding at 5.2 million can be placed in this category. So we are going to go look. So 2019 was our base year revenue. So from there, anything in gray that you see here can be considered the extent of the reduction in revenue. And so what you see in black would be where your actual revenue is falling. And then this dotted line is what they consider counterfactual revenue. So that's just going to be where they think we would have had our revenues come in if COVID had not happened. And so from here, this is just our actual numbers. So in 2019, we had $22.1 million in revenue. And then in 2020, we fell down to about 18.74. And so that gives us a gap of roughly 5.46 million. And that is using their 9% growth based on the years 2016 up through 2019. And I'll walk through how we got those calculations. And then we can use the revenue loss category for 2021, 2022, and 2023 revenue losses as well. So at this point in time, we have 5.2 million that we can consider revenue loss. So once we finish 2021, we could add additional money in that bucket. We could say, oh yeah, we've got this much in revenue from 2021 that we lost as well. So potentially we could put all of our funding in this category.
Laurel, in 2020 and 21, did we utilize any of our reserve funds?
We did not. We had a very good year in 2019. Unfortunately, we do not have the same padding to withstand the revenue losses starting this new budget for 2021.
Laurel, this is John Stecker. I'm curious, what are the revenue losses coming from? I know a chunk of that's passport revenue, obviously.
Yeah, so it's passport, recreation. We've got different licensing. It's kind of sprinkled throughout. And I mean, I can work through and show you where it all is, if that is something we want to get into.
Oh, the big categories are passport and recreation, right?
Yes, that is two of the largest ones, yes.
Any other large categories of loss?
Mitigation fees as well. Those were, I want to say that was probably around, oh, it's been a while since I looked at that. I think it was around 2 million, 2 or 3 million.
Loss of revenue from litigation fees?
Mitigation.
Mitigation, I'm sorry. Good question. Okay. But it didn't sound right to me.
I don't know that I can see everyone. Is that, anyone else have questions on that?
My only question is on the counterfactual revenue. Is that just the projection under the guidelines that the Treasury Department gave us for?
Yes.
Can we come up with a different term? That's counterintuitive to me.
Yes, I think they were saying that basically it wasn't.
It's our projected revenue loss based on the assumptions they're allowed.
Yes.
Based on the assumptions that they're allowing us to use.
Yes. And I just called it counterfactual because that's what they're calling it.
Oh, that's what I asked. They are calling it that?
Yes, that is their term.
Okay.
That's the Treasury's term.
That's
The
what
federal.
So Laurel, if we can show this 5.2 loss, does that mean that we can, this is probably too simplistic for me, but we can take 5.2 million of the American Recovery Plan funds and basically utilize them as we wish, or do we still have to follow the same guidelines?
So we do have to, it does have to meet, it does have to directly provide services or aid to citizens. So we can't, so I would say a lot of your capital projects that were put off in 2020, any kind of critical infrastructure projects that we've been putting off that, we were worried about revenue, those are things that would fit well. I would say anything, especially in the general fund, anything that can essentially plug the hole in the bucket. That would be the best source or the best way to spend this funding, because not only will you benefit the general fund, but you will also take care of these capital needs that are growing.
Just to help me clarify in my head, we can't, and I hear you saying this, don't just bury it in the general fund, but you can use it in the general fund if it's specifically allocated to those two services that directly aid the community, as the example you gave, item 2 on your list. So
Yes.
we can show that, we'll pass, any capital out or anything that would be allocated appropriately.
Correct.
Michael, I'm sorry I missed the discussion last week, but, when we did the CARES Act, it was kind of a fire drill, because I think that money got allocated around June, and we had until the end of November to spend it. And so we had to come up with a plan and execute it and have the money spent in a very short order. We've got the luxury of time here, so I think, well, at least what I'm struggling with is to know what is our plan for identifying and making decisions on what our options are, and do we have a schedule of when we're gonna do that, when you're gonna bring to us recommendations, and when we would deliberate and have discussion on how to use that money.
We're putting together a rough draft of that very calendar, Mayor. We do want to consult with you and Mayor Pro Tem Bignall, and then we'd be presenting that in a subsequent council meeting. Our goal is to do this in the last session of September.
To discuss the schedule.
Yes.
Okay, because I don't know what others think. I mean, that's where I'm kind of at. I think we understand the money coming in and how it's calculated. I think now we're trying to figure out what's the process for figuring out what we want to do with it and making decisions on that. So I think that'd be good if in 2 weeks we can come back and discuss a timeline for having a process established for making those decisions.
And we are working with department heads at this point in time as we're reviewing the budget for the amendment. So that it is the perfect time for us to be able to tell you exactly where our holes are.
Okay.
And that's everything I've got. This just shows the reduction in revenue overall.
Okay. Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Riles.
Director Gimzo, what I was wondering is, you had mentioned that needs to be direct aid to citizens. I wanted to know, in this case, how that is defined. If whatever we do, say it's some program that gives something to people from City Hall or whatever, are we checking mail addresses that they are residents in Mill Creek, or is it that type of thing?
So
There's some programs, for example, masks, I remember that being just come get masks, or, well, if you show a piece of mail, here is your mask.
so if it is a COVID item, then that is something that would work. But as far as like, if we wanted, I know you had talked about potentially doing, I don't know if they're like gift cards or certificates for each household. That is not something this funding will be able to do, just because you do have to prove that there was some kind of COVID hardship. And so there's a little bit more red tape in relation to that. But as far as like masks or anything that would be helping with COVID, that is something we could do.
Okay, that's a helpful clarification, thank you.
Councilmember Morgan.
To that point, what about community-wide things such as if we had items for park renovations that were on the agenda for 2020? Would those qualify?
Those would, yes.
Need the CIP. Right. Any other questions on the update?
Through the chair. Laurel, if you could clarify the extent to which previously budgeted items would disqualify, just so that we get a sense of where we're at in terms of the parameters.
So it can be budgeted, but whatever it is that was budgeted still, if we're covering it, it has to be related to COVID. So if it was like an expense for cleaner or masks, that kind of thing, shields, those would work. As far as projects that were previously budgeted, as long as the project has some kind of direct benefit for the public, those would qualify. But if it's something that would only like benefit staff, that, if we wanted to update the break room, that's not something that would qualify, because that's not going to help the public.
So as a hypothetical, or not so hypothetical, council member Morgan's question about items, for example, that are in the capital plan, are those within bounds to add funding to from ARPA?
Yes. As long as it's helping the public gets some kind of direct benefit. So when we are talking parks, that would be an immediate benefit to the public.
So wow, so it doesn't matter if it's budget or unbudgeted, if it helps.
Correct. And so also in the category A, if there was some kind of infrastructure that was put in place, kind of like the safe in our city hall, those expenses would be something ARPA could pay for if we wanted to expand buildings, if we needed more space for something to prevent COVID from spreading. I mean, there's a really broad opportunity here, as long as there's either a direct benefit for the public or we are trying to assist with infrastructure that's going to prevent the spread of COVID.
So it could be something that's non-COVID related, correct? It could be like a park that needs to be renovated, nothing to do with COVID, but we want to renovate it. And it's on the CIP already, it's part of the city's proposed expenditures. I knew we couldn't use it to reduce debt, but I thought we weren't allowed to use it for budget items, but you're saying now that is okay, we could use that.
As long as we use the revenue loss category, yes.
As long as we use the revenue loss
Yeah,
category.
because it will be a benefit to the public. It is a project.
It's because we're running through the revenue loss category.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Anything further on this, Michael?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. The next item on the agenda was a new initiative that Council Member Cavallari brought to us, but he has asked that we move it to the next meeting. Councilmember Bond will be here, so all 7 of us can have the discussion. So we will not be doing item E. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. Item F is approval of checks number 63663 through 63783 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $532,481.63. The audit committee was Councilmember Steckler and Councilmember Cavallari. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions. No exceptions.
And item G, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $666,403.66. Any exceptions?
We'll see in fact one. I have the 532,000 here. Let's see that. But that's all that Councilman Cavallari and I have signed so far.
Lower package, we need to pull those.
I went through them all. Let's see at 600. So
If you look on page 36 of your packet,
I went to the physical pack, the physical box. And I didn't all see, in fact, I wondered where that was, why I only signed one.
yes, the cover sheet with all the totals are in your agenda packet.
Oh. I came down to sign the actual document itself, the actual voucher itself. And Councilmember Cavallari and I unfortunately only found the one for 532,000.
Grant, looking for some direction here. Should we pull item G from the consent agenda this week? Can we move to the next meeting?
I think you can. I think you can. Yes.
If there's no objection, we'll pull item G.
No objection.
Okay.
No objection.
And then item H is city council meeting minutes of September 7th, 2021. So is there a motion to approve items F and H of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Reports, I think I only have 2 things. Enjoyed going to the opening of the festival in August. I did have a couple of mayor's meetings in August and I left my notes at home, so I'll report on that. forgot to bring anything. So Councilmember Steckler, any report tonight?
Couple of quick things. The city is officially moving ahead, confirmed that they're doing a partnership with the Kiwanis Club of Mill Creek and People's Bank. And we will be doing our annual shred event on October 23rd at City Hall North. So that is definitely on and confirmed with the trucking company. And that's all I have for this month.
Councilmember Cavalier.
No report, Mayor.
Before I get to Mayor Pro Tem, I forgot, thank you for stepping in last week and filling in for me while I was in Montana. Any report tonight?
No report.
Councilmember Briles.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one last, one quick item. I know we've been getting back to school in our district here, and as we do, traffic sometimes will snarl around school in and out times. The other day, I happened to go out when Heatherwood Junior High was getting out and got to slow down and sit there for a little bit because I couldn't get past and just said, okay, wait 2 minutes. I did see some other people cross the double yellow line around me and in front of me to get out of there, and it was very nearly very dangerous. And so I want to remind people, it's 2 minutes. It could mean someone's life. Please hold up.
Councilmember Morgan, any report tonight?
No report, Mayor.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. The only report we have this evening is from our Deputy City Manager, Martin Yamamoto. At the last council meeting, there was a question from council about our grants. And so Martin has pulled together an inventory of all the grants the city currently has pending. Martin?
City Manager. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, in the last council meeting, Councilmember Steckler did bring up a question about how we're looking at grant opportunities. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to also give you an inventory of what we currently have, kind of what our prospects are, and kind of how we're going to approach this going forward. Just a little bit of story. I know that we're always involved with grants, every municipality. In my experiences, fortunately, in my early in my career, there's working with various agencies. There's always this pervasive apprehension about the fear of losing money. It's easy money. These are one of the things. So some of the things that we kind of want to avoid as we move forward and seek those funding opportunities. We want to make sure that we're addressing our needs properly. That we're looking at our grantee capacity, our ability to actually fund the grants and work with those grants from award all the way through closeout. So, in my experiences, there has been issues with that. And what we don't want to do is return money that we cannot use appropriately. Here in the city of Mill Creek, what we're doing now is we are funding based on priority. Talking with different department directors, city managers, we're going to move forward as we always do, looking at our current sources of where we find those funding opportunities. Be proactive as we go forward in new agencies. And we've always providing the help of community members, council leadership to forward us those opportunities as well as we look for those priorities that actually are aligned with our leadership priorities and our management's programmatic and operational needs. Currently, across right now, what we're doing, we have a number of sources that we are using. Bringing some experience from Seattle PD, I can bring some ideas as it pertains to some of the PD related opportunities that we can seek as well. We're working with the TID Transformation Information Board for transportation related, street related projects. The Washington State Department of Ecology also that pertains to surface water type projects. Work with the DJA, which is the Bureau of Justice Assistance for currently ballistic vest replacements that are occurring on an ongoing basis, and other types of DOJ related agencies as well. Right now, our inventory is we have 4 grants, of which one we mentioned earlier, ARPA. As you know, I think there's a $5.8 million balance on there. more than given the deadline. So I won't go into much detail about that. The second one that we have currently is Washington State TID, the Transportation Information Board of the state of Washington. It's a $300,000 grant. That deadline is March of 2022. Currently, we just signed on four different projects assigned for that grant. One you're all familiar with, the Jackson High School sidewalk, the crosswalk. The flashing beacons up near Mill Creek Elementary. Results. The third one is there's a missing pedestrian connection on Heatherwood Drive all the way up to South Leonard Highway. That's the third one, and the last one is increasing driver awareness towards pedestrians and bicycles over at I think it's the North Creek Drive. And that's going to involve markers and pavement related changes. So that one is the second one. The third one is with Snohomish County. It's the Silvercrest Park upgrades. That's pretty straightforward. Upgrades of basketball courts, I think replacing picnic tables and other types of capital items on there, irrigation, fence repair, things like that. That's the third one. There's the last one is with the Washington State Department of Commerce, and total award is $294,000, of which there's a balance of about $90,000 left. And that award ends in 2023, although we're pretty much going to be done with that pretty quick here. That one is partially funded by community development, 30%, and 70% is road improvement. And that is consisting the economic and sub-area plan for Mill Creek Mall and Corridor. Those are the four that we have currently. There's one that's currently for ballistic vest replacement, which is $16,000. The match is about 50%. Well, it is 50% on that. That is in the application process, and it hasn't been awarded yet, but that's something we're working on right now, waiting for that award to come through. That one is recurring every year. There are two others that we're actually in the process of looking at. One relates to Silvercrest Park, another $88,000 that will further supplement those changes at that part. And then the second one that we're looking at is with and that's with the state of Washington, not Snohomish County this time. The second one that is under public works is the Washington State Department of Ecology funded grant. Or this one's recurring. It's GIS implementation related grant that provides funding. It's $50,000 that ended in March of 2021. We'll apply for it again, and we'll most likely get funded for that. It's for reporting GIS related, office related tasks, inspections, and the reports. Yeah. That's our portfolio, a total of about $6.5 million. I don't know if you're aware, in 2020, I think we extinguished about 2.5 to 6 million. So we're continuing to look for more opportunities going forward. Any questions?
Thank you. Since that's okay, I'll go first and start it up. Thank you, Deputy City Manager, for the report. That's a great recap of where we currently go. And that was part of my question, so you totally answered that. The other part of it, the part that I also was bringing up is, to kind of expand on a little bit. I know we have a lot of new employees, and the good news is you get those fresh eyes and people, but there's also a lot of history that goes away with long-term when we lose employees. So I was trying to get ahead of the curve. What I wanted to see, I'm not trying to tell you your job because you're better at it than I am. You guys are better at it than I am. But the vision of what I was thinking of was I'd like to see us put together since many of these grants are repetitious, they happen every year, kind of get ahead of the curve, what's out there for 2021, what's out there for 22. And I'm thinking that definitely reaching out to our representatives, our county representative who's local, the District 43 representative, Jared B., as well as our two state representatives that are local, sitting down with them and find out what do they know about the grants that are coming up next year and the next 2 years, getting ahead of the curve, well, there's gonna be this kind of money and this kind of money and this kind of money available. I know Snohomish County has a handful of grants that they do every year. And some of those can total up to over $2 million. So there's such great funds out there for us. I kind of like to get ahead of the curve on what's available. What could we go after? And other part of this is for the council and your benefit. We had a situation a couple of years ago where our wonderful city employees, in their zealous zeal, went out and got a grant that some members of the council were not supportive of. And so there was this, maybe the council should be aware of it before we go after it kind of a thing. And so I was thinking that what would really be helpful is, you know, at least, and especially if you're in the scenario that you have someone like yourself meeting with these representatives, both in the state and the county level, find out what's available, get a calendar together, kind of get a plan in action so that we know that, gosh, in April of next year, we're going to go after this money. In June, we're going after this money. And January, we're going after this money, so that we can start thinking and the council can be aware of what kind of grants are available, just in case there are any that for some reason, I don't know why, but say there is, where the council would say, no, don't go after that money. We don't want you to go after that grant because we definitely don't want to take money and then give it back, right, kind of a thing. So I was thinking more along the lines of a calendar, in addition to what you just presented, which is great. We got some great projects out there. We got some stuff that we're not paying for, which I love. But I'd like to see us get ahead of the curve on a calendar, get some of our new people out there, meeting with these representatives, and clearly in their mind, knowing the dates of what's available out there. Because I have no clue. But I know that there are recurring grants available every year, and especially at the county level, that I'd like to get ahead of the curve on. And we've got some big stuff coming that we would like to get them aware of what we're trying to go after, so that maybe we can join forces and say, well, there is a huge such and such grant, maybe that could be something you guys could apply for. We can go after it. And so that was my thought in addition to the report. The report's great. Thank you. That was a good recap.
Yeah, there's something called grantors affinity. A lot of times those grants are localized across certain regions where you get a really good idea of the giving capacity, and as well as their willingness to distribute funds to adjacent agencies. So that's something that we are, it's on our radar, but you have a good idea about making it work. And that was our intent as well, to make sure that everything is transparent, that we're not giving back funds, that we don't, that we either prudently.
For any reason why we use, that should be that, yeah. I would just like to see a calendar of what's out there, what we work on, what can we work on. That would really help me and the rest of the council.
To the chair, just a real quick add on, what we're also contemplating before we apply for grants, so that we eliminate that misstep. We would come to council and you'd see what it is we're looking to apply for. The way I've seen it structured in the past, and I believe that we have this templated out, is one resolution gives us permission to apply and they come back before we accept. And the other is a blanket permission so that you can both apply and accept if awarded. So as these grants develop, we'll have a more concrete conversation. As we get to more details, we can go grant by grant in terms of specifics. So step one, the calendar, we heard you, we'll work on it. Thank you.
Yeah, because the issue with that project you're referencing wasn't the grant that they went after, it is that we never had a discussion as to whether that's the project that we would support doing. Right. So that's what we're trying to avoid. And picking up on Councilmember Stecker's comment, I mean, to me, it's, do we have an operating procedure? You know, who's in charge? Is this now falling to the deputy city manager to be the point person for identifying this? Is it the department heads? You know, I think it'd be good to know what is the process for identifying the recurring grants and what grants may be coming available that aren't recurring, so that we're staying ahead of the curve rather than behind the curve.
On that point, that's our intention, and we'll formalize that, Mayor. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to point out that this is exactly what I was talking about in regards to setting our legislative priorities and having that in order, so that we have things planned out and we know what we are looking at to go after funds for. from the county, from the state, and from the federal government. And so it's extremely important that we get this legislative priorities in order. I kept bringing it up and it just falls on deaf ears. It seems like, for this exact reason, so that we are looking for funds and that the city manager has direction on what the council has blessed and knows what we need to be looking for funds for, and that we have things in the pipeline that are actually developed for looking forward to the future, so that when we're looking at funds, we have already laid the groundwork and we can get those funds, because we have to have things that we are as a council looking at doing that we need funds for. So I just want to point out that this is exactly what I have been talking about. And this is exactly why, so that we can get grant funding. Thank you.
Through the chair, Mayor Pro Tem, I recall the very first conversation about this involved our county legislators, and they were asking for a list from us. And you were wondering where that list was. So your point is well taken, and we hope to be able to report progress on that. We're working closely with Director Todd, particularly in those areas in which there might be an opportunity within our capital plan to apply for these grants. One of the concerns when we originally brought that to us was that they were expecting within a certain deadline that this work was going to be completed. As you know, we have just recently filled almost all of our vacancies in the Public Works Department. Final one is the Surface Water Program Coordinator. But we're going to fully expect momentum to pick up, so that we're able to identify those projects that will meet within the parameters, the completion deadline parameters that we all know is basically 101 for grant writing. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Anything further on the grants?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay. We will go to audience communication. Anyone? I see Barbara's hand. Anyone in the, we're going to start, Barbara, we're going to start in the chambers, if that's okay. I'll move to you second. So go ahead, come to the podium, name and address, and please try to keep your remarks to 3 minutes if you could.
Thank you very much. My name is Randy Fay. I'm one of the commissioners with Snohomish Regional Fire. It's very good to see those of you I met, and nice to meet you gentlemen as well. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm one of the hill people of Clearview, so I'm kind of your neighbor back behind Mill Creek here. I just wanted to bring greetings from the fire commissioners. I think in the COVID world we've been living in, it's been hard for us to be present and be available to answer questions and that type of thing. More to the point, what the commissioners asked me to communicate with you is that as we've been working with your city manager to start the conversation about our next contract period, we were a little bit troubled when over the past several months, there's been some articles written and distributed to your citizens that characterized the fire district's behavior as threatening. There was a lot of incorrect information in those articles, but we've known because of our past history that those things work themselves out as we communicate, the public gets good communication. But in particular, we wanted to be accountable to the council and to the city manager that if there's been any actions taken by our board of commissioners or our firefighters on the street that appears to be trying to bully the process or act threatening, we want to be accountable for that, and we want to know about it, and we want to take corrective action if indeed that kind of attitude is being communicated. I know that Chief O'Brien and the city manager have been in close communication, and up to this point, all that's really gone on is that we've responded to the city's request for in-depth information about our finances, salaries, equipment, so that your folks can do the best analysis possible on what our costs look like as they move toward decision making. So I believe in talking to Brian today that there's a meeting being scheduled with the city manager to really have the first conversation of this process about what life will look like. The second and last thing I wanted to direct is we've also picked up that there may be concern, and I don't know at what level, that because the fire district's gone through some mergers and grown in size, that we're turning our eyes away from Mill Creek. And I want to tell you, there is nothing farther from the truth. We've been working hard to be very respectful of the city manager's process. And so his request, and correct me if I misspeak, is to communicate directly with the chief and kind of step in when the city was ready to talk to us. So we've kind of sat back in our chairs waiting for that process to work itself out. Mill Creek, we have a 35-year history with your community, and we love that history. And the city of Mill Creek is a real cornerstone for us, regardless of how the district may change otherwise. So please trust me when I tell you that we are very anxious to continue to serve your citizens as your fire department. And any of the commissioners and I are more than happy to be accountable to you during this process and to your city manager and talk to you if you have questions related to our motivations, our goals, our process, or if there has been something that's been troubling thus far in the process, please reach out to us, and we are more than happy to sit down and talk to you about it. So again, thank you for letting us serve your community, and I appreciate the time.
It's good to see you in person.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks for coming.
Ms. Heidel, floor is yours. Name and address, 3 minutes, please.
Barb Heidel, 1401 144th Place Southeast, Mill Creek. Thank you, Mayor. I believe one thing the City Council has had as a priority is transparency with good communication. In regards to this, I would appreciate acknowledgement to emails received. Please check your emails in a timely fashion so I know if you've received them or not. Secondly, I still have a serious concern about the continued exodus of city employees. There are more who are still looking elsewhere and probably going to leave soon. Our city does not seem to be a good, pleasant work environment. I fervently hope and would like to see the city management find a way to change this. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Would anyone else like to speak to the council? Seeing none, we are now going to recess into executive session for 3 topics. First is potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subsection I, 3 little i's. Second, discussion of the performance of a public employee per RCW 43.30.110, subsection 1G, and to discuss negotiations on the performance of a publicly bid contract pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, subsection 1D. Grant, am I correct? I don't anticipate we're going to be taking action at the end of the executive session. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
How long are we estimating we'll need to get started?
The safe estimate is 1 hour.
Okay, so it is 6:52. Should we just go till 8 o'clock?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, we will be in recess in executive session until 8 p.m.
Council has extended executive session until 8:30.
So they're not recognizing what happened. Yeah, it's not, yeah, there's blood in the water. Yeah, let's not fuck this up. If we have to use back channel stuff, why don't you let me reach out to them?
Hey, guys, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. Oh my God, look at all the people out here. What's Naomi said?
What is
Good
that?
timing.
Okay, the council, we concluded our executive session 1 minute early at 8:29. No action is being taken. Without objection, hearing any objections, we'll adjourn the regular meeting at 8:30, or 8:29. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Naomi, I'm bringing the vouchers over to you.
Okay.
Find that, maybe we can just sign it now or something. Exactly.